What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded channel. I am your host, Lore Reloaded. I want to thank everybody for being here. As you guys know, if you're watching this video on demand, you know how it goes. I'm going to wait for people to come in and get stuff started, say hello. Then we'll definitely jump into analyzing Kirk. But while we wait, you guys can always check me out at twitter.com/lore reloaded. Hey, if you have any questions, go to facebook.com/lore reloaded. Leave a message there. Of course, I have my editor here today who is doing what he always does. And again, while we're waiting for people to come in, I need to do an apology. Just one of those epic apologies, and it's on par with my Voyager apology. So if you've seen that, you know what's about to come. So I, at one point, was given a shout out to another YouTuber, and I said that she had a British accent or a Scottish accent. And of course, what I meant to say was English accent versus Scottish accent. But I forgot that the English get really upset when you remind them that the Scottish can have their own nationality and that the Scottish aren't always under the boot of the English. So I want to apologize to all the English overlords for dare saying that a Scottish person might actually have free will. So I apologize for that. I'm going to send all the massive amounts of comments that I get on that video to here so that you guys can see it. And with that out of the way, let's take a look at a couple of people. We got the Cool 31, what's going on? The Mr. Pete channel, Johnny Doe, how are you? Captain Jesse 1, of course. We're never having a good show if we don't have disappointed Optimus here, of course. We also have Michael Casey, Park Maxwell, what is going on? Johnny Heary in the house, Carlo Albanese. Mr. Pete Channel says, England, Scotland, Wales, all complicated. It's not complicated if you're English, because if you're English, that means everyone's British. Johnny Doe, deuces, my friend, old fire master. Been here a long time. We, of course, got Jonathan Stevie, Jay Wings, and Jay Wiggs says, Winston Churchill forgives me. Good. Von Miller yelling for the Empire, of course. All right, so let's just break it down. Now, for those who don't know, this will also be a call-in show. And so if you are on my Discord, you will see a place for you to join. It'll say like live waiting room or something like that. So go down there, hang out. Towards the end, we really will bring some people in, have a conversation. But right now, it's just going to be you and me talking like this. And of course, we are going to be talking about Kirk. The good, the bad, all of the differences, really everything that has to do with Kirk. By the way, also let me know how you like the new layout with the feedback. I no longer need to show your guys' comments. Let's break it down. So, Kirk, honestly, I think that while he's not my number one, when you look at Kirk, with some exceptions on how he treated women, I think he is one of the more, if not the most realistic captain, and is generally written very, very well. And he plays, I think, as close as you can get to both a soldier, somebody in the military, as well as an explorer. Now, taking out the campiness, ignoring the campiness of the original series, the show is done really, really well. And I think he breaks it down between what needs to be done. When you look at what's done in the movies, with certain exception, I would say he also is very real, I want to say, or realistic. I like how they've done it with his son, how he breaks down, how in Undiscovered Country he feels like a real person. It honestly, the original series feels like the most down-to-earth series for me, honestly. Even more than Cisco when you take a look at it. And the anti-trekker is going to blow his mind to hear me saying that. But again, he really shows what Starfleet was supposed to be, which was part military, mainly an exploratory type of organization. Looking at what you guys have to say, Captain Jesse 1, William Shatner is the Kirk. James Callan and Vic also play good Kirk. I agree. When I think Kirk, though, I'm talking about the original series, not the reboot. Though I do like the rebooted character. I prefer Kirk's character development more in the movies when he's older and an admiral, dealing with the harsh reality of age and wanting to be young and in command again. The interesting thing about Kirk, what I like about Kirk is that it really shows a progression in the series to the movies. When you look at him in the series, as you say, he's young, he's brash, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's going out there, young being relative, of course. And in the movies, he's more seasoned, he's older. And I think that brings up a good point and a good dichotomy. I think it's a very well-written way of doing it, honestly. Alexandra Sandu, if you didn't grow up with TOS, it's very hard to take it seriously, just saying. I was born in 84, so I don't know how old you think I am. Kirk was too much of a filled Boy Scout and should have never taken up the Admiral role, says Captain Jesse 1. I don't think he sucked as an Admiral. I mean, yeah, sometimes he did. Yeah, I take that back. He wasn't the best Admiral ever, I guess. And his character kind of played into that. There was a lot of character flaws that he had for him to be an admiral. And that, I would say, was unrealistic for him to go to admiral and keep getting bumped down and whatnot. Kirk acted like a Lone Ranger. That definitively he did, Bad Wolf Gamer. Kirk was too much of a... I already read that. Park Maxwell, he was a better captain than admiral. I agree. Michael Case, have you been drinking Romulan Ale? No, I haven't been drinking at all. Am I coming off like I've been drinking? I like the fact that when he usually... Now, again, you have to get over the campiness, and there are some points when it's like, Captain Kirk is like the best ever. Oh, my God, Mary Sue. Captain Kirk can be a Gary Sue sometimes. He just can. And it happens a bit more than I would prefer. But I think that a lot of the times he's written to break things down, to think things through. He, of course, has some times when he's, hip gun politics, when he's brash. But I do think that he breaks things down very, very well. I think that when you see him in a lot of the episodes, even the original series, he will consider his options, and he will debate with Spock or McCoy and other characters. He can be a really good captain, too, knowing when to hold back, even at times putting up his crew in danger to save other people. So I don't... The original series is by far not my favorite, even the movies. But just analyzing the character himself, there's a lot to really be respectful of. There's a lot to like, I think. Nate Watson, of course, giving a super chat, which, as you guys know, I do this full-time. We have decided I will continue to do this full-time until the day that I die, and it's because of super chats, viewers like you, patrons. Nate Watson says, Janeway became an admiral with untreated bipolar disorder with PTSD. Kirk was tamed by 24th century admiral standards. If you haven't seen it, go to SF Debris and watch his watch his Nemesis review. He does a great Evil Janeway in that, which shows her orchestrating the entire thing with Shinzon. It's just absolutely fantastic. Johnny Doe, fun fact, the term Mary Sue was created as a result of Star Trek TOS fanfiction. I did know that, in fact. Great captains make horrible admirals, and great admirals make horrible captains, says Samaravati 3. That's an interesting thing, because you have to be a captain to get to admiral, to my knowledge. I could be wrong on that. I'm not a military person. But they are specifically different roles with different skill sets, and being a captain, while on Star Trek and on TV, it is a lot of it's action-oriented, a lot of it's doing all these crazy things. Being a captain is a lot of it's being a manager of people. Let's see. At Lore Reloaded, Star Trek Beyond, Captain Kirk is given the option to jump 2 flag officers' ratings to be offered a vice admiral position 3 years into the 5-year mission. Okay. Well, then, that was a bad decision on their part. The prophets made Sisko like them. He is immortal. He can travel through space and time without a spaceship, says Daniel Berzon. The other captain will eventually wither away, so Sisko wins the battle of the captains. Yeah, but it doesn't make him moral, necessarily, wouldn't you say? Just because he's immortal. Of course, technically, Captain Kirk was in the Rift, so he could go anywhere, too. He could do everything the prophets could do. Khan's assessment of Kirk's ability to allow Spock to attack while Kirk analyzes was spot on in the Botany Bay episode. Yeah, the only time I really... The issue, I think, with Captain Kirk, a lot of the issues, before we get into the way he was written with women, a lot of things that I don't like about Captain Kirk is that he was written... when he writes his character, or when he goes out of his way to, when William Shatner writes his character, or William Shatner goes out of his way to make decisions for his character, I don't necessarily like the way that Captain Kirk goes. I think that's very ego-driven. But when you have the actual writers, when he's following what the writers say, and going that way, more than not, he is an awesome captain. He... Again, I would say him and Sisko definitively, and I might pull Lorca into this a little bit before they made him crazy with the Terran Empire stuff. Was cognizant of those around him, cared about those around him, was even aware and worried about the enemy generally. He looked at it from different points of view. His opinions at the beginning of Undiscovered Country with Cartwright. So you had Cartwright, who was obviously the bad guy on it, right? But then you have Kirk, who has the similar points of view, but isn't the bad guy. And I think that is an interesting take when you look at how Cartwright handled it and how Kirk handled it. At Lore Reloaded, Vaughn, what would the Sisko need with a spaceship, says Von Miller. He wouldn't need anything. Yves, how do you say that? Yves Trudeau. The character strikes me as a space cowboy hero, idolizing the playboy lifestyle. The writing was definitely of the time. The BS about women being seen, not heard. You know, it's an interesting dichotomy, honestly, when you look at the original series, when you watch it for what it is, right? And when did they come out? They came out in the 60s, I believe. They talked about equality. And you guys should check out the Anti-Trekker if you haven't taken a look. He really breaks down how Gene was full of crap, and it was more the studios that did a lot of this. Gene wasn't the visionary he pretends he was. It's all about equality. So you have women. You even have a woman as an XO. And you, of course, have different ethnicities, different races. And women sometimes are treated really, really powerfully. You have strong characters. You have women that makes differences. You even have women who are more than just seen and not heard. There are women who play roles that impact the stories and can impact future episodes. Then you have the dichotomy where there are women who are seen and not heard. Women are looked at as the weaker sex, the weaker binary sex. They're not the non-binary; they're the binary in the 60s. And you have the women who are conquests for Kirk. I think the worst I ever saw Kirk, and there may be just another one that I'm not thinking about, but was during the Terran Empire episode. Because I watched that one a couple of times because I was doing a Terran Empire series. And he meets this woman in the Terran Empire. She helps him out. Not Terran Empire, in the Mirror Universe. It's with the Terran Empire, so the Mirror Universe. He meets this woman, and then he goes back to the Prime timeline. And this one, it's the same woman, but they haven't met in the Prime timeline. And he is so creepy because it's at the end, and she comes up and she does a report, and he says, "Thank you, Lieutenant," or whatever. And he knows her from the Mirror Universe, but he doesn't know her from the Prime timeline. And Spock picks up on it, and he's like, "Oh, do you know her?" And he smiles all creepy, and he's like, no, but I think we could be good friends. And then he walks over with his hands behind his back, whistling or whatever, just trying to make, small talk. And while I won't agree, there's a YouTuber that I actually got to meet before the channel. Channel didn't even have 200 subscribers. It was at the Game of Thrones convention. Her name is Rawrist, Rawrist. And I like her. She's nice enough. Very outgoing. Funny. And I wouldn't agree with everything she has to say, but she makes some interesting points on 5 top reasons not to kiss Kirk. I think she goes a little too far with it, but she brings up some interesting scenarios that I think kind of points out how creepy Kirk can get. Alexandra Sandu, I mean, no disrespect to hardcore fans, but I saw the original series for the first time this year, and it's close to impossible to be serious about it. I find the discussions about the original series more profound than the episodes. You have to take away a lot of the camp from them. They're very campy. They didn't make the original series with the intent on building a franchise, and that's obvious until they get to the movies. That it is absolutely obvious they had no intention of this being a franchise. They were just trying to make it from time to time. So you have to remove some of the campiness, for sure. At Lore Reloaded, Kirk was pissed off that Cartwright tried to get him killed. The entire situation changed his mind, in my opinion. I think it was more than that, but, I mean, yeah, someone trying to get you killed is a negative, I would agree. Jerome96114, as bad as Kirk's behavior to women is, other movies at the time were much worse. Blade Runner, for example, romanticizes outright rape. Just because something else is worse doesn't make it okay, in my opinion. At all. What would have happened if the female number 1 was Kirk's first officer? Would Kirk have dated number 1? I think we would have saw a lot more... I think it would have got creepy. I don't know that it could have worked. Because of the power dynamics and the way they looked at it. Nate Watson, again out, guys. Thank you again, Nate Watson. Nate Watson, as I have said it 1,000 times, man. I'm going to have to buy you I'm going to have to take you out for lunch. When I finally end up going to conventions and stuff, and I will if this keeps up. Man, when we meet in person, I'm taking you to lunch. Nate Watson says, we saw female Starfleet captains in the Enterprise and TNG era. Perhaps Kirk's era was regressive compared to surrounding eras, similar to how the 80s were regressive to human rights in the U.S. I don't know about the last part, but yeah, I mean, we see regression. It happens. We saw regression from the original series to the Next Generation when it comes from war, from being ready not to get killed by other species. So regression like that could occur. And what it possibly, because a lot of people get mad at this, but Star Trek Discovery is canon for the moment. And it is possible that after the Klingon War that occurred, it caused a lot of the more ultra-conservative, war-hungry aspects, the negative aspects of conservatism, to take over, and we could have seen regression that way. I mean, you could make an argument for that, I think. By the time that Kirk got the captain seat, Commander number 1 would have been a captain herself. But we have a lot of evidence to show that women weren't captains of that era. And people try to explain it away, but in the original series, there's quite a bit of evidence that women weren't captains. And I would even say a little bit of racism, because, well, I don't know. I think it's on the fence, because we know that Vulcans during the original series weren't generally captains. Now, I think that that's arguable, because I think Vulcans... I have done a series before the Federation, and I did it on the Vulcans, and it's worth a watch if you haven't seen it. But Vulcans generally don't want the limelight as much as you would think. They want to set things on a certain path and then stay back and do their own thing, with the exception of a couple of corrupted Vulcans. But you could argue that maybe the Federation, especially the United Earth, had some animosity for what the Vulcans had done. So maybe that's why we didn't see him. So, I mean, it's arguable that you could say there was some bigotry at that time in the original series. Park Maxwell, the Federation was during a Cold War with the Klingons. It's not hard to believe that it caused some racism within the Federation. That's fair. Jay Wiggs, was Carol Marcus ever in the original series episode, and did Kirk almost marry her? Not sure. You're going to have to remind me of that. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Jay Wiggs, though I feel like I should know that. Yeah, I mean, so when it comes, the interesting thing is I like William Shatner. I've met William Shatner. I would love to sit down and talk to him. I didn't really get to talk to him, but I have met him a couple times, in fact. I met him when I was a kid, and then 20 years later, I got to meet him again at a convention. He was actually in my town at a hotel that I got to meet him at, or my hometown. I don't live there anymore. When you watch William Shatner, especially like he did a thing where he was talking to all the captains. Like he talked to Kate Mulgrew. He talked to Avery Brooks. He talked to Patrick Stewart. And it was like the captain's chair or something. He was very, very handsy with Kate Mulgrew, even to a point that she had to swat him away. So Shatner was very consistent with some of Kirk's aspects too, and I think maybe that played into it. The mother of his kid. Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't instantly know that. I don't think he ever got married. I don't believe so. Yeah, she was Rathacon. I don't think they ever got married. And it's called The Captains. It's on Netflix. How will Discovery be able to write themselves out of the paper bag they stuck themselves into meeting the USS Enterprise and changes to a bridge window? Dude, don't even get me started on that. That is absolutely ridiculous. It is a visual reboot at best. I don't like including Discovery as a part of canon as much as you guys don't, but I do honor my rules. And my rules generally are reflective. It's what CBS and Paramount talk about, and as well as generally, unless overwritten by CBS and Paramount, what Gene has said. And so it's a visual reboot, and that's absolutely ridiculous. I hate that people fell for it. When people saw the Enterprise and they started, and then you did the old music or whatever, it's just stupid. People are so... Anyway. While in the original series itself we saw no female captains, in the movies we do. In Voyage Home there is one on the Saratoga. That is true. However, in the original series, multiple times, it is either talked about or inferred that women aren't in charge. And we see them always in roles of submissiveness in the original series. The movies occur after the original series by the timeline. So by that time, we would start seeing women start to come into control. But during the original series, there's a really good argument, and you have to bend over backwards to pretend that there wasn't sexism with women in control. And on top of that, when we do see women in power, now again, just because we don't see women captains, we do see strong women, strong characters, even on the good guys sometimes. But some of the women who were strong characters were bad guys ultimately. Like you see the Romulan commander, for instance, as an example, was a strong female, but she was ultimately a bad guy. ZS says TNG, The Next Generation, was analogous to the early 90s. They had peace with the Klingons for, 60 years in canon. The Romulans were silent as long, and last real conflict was Cardassians. That is true. Discovery will never write itself out of the paperback. Of that, I would agree. It's unfortunate, but the outrage against rapey, she did that, culture is built on double standards. Okay. Not completely sure what you mean by that. My interpretation, I might agree. Disney Trek would be interesting. Wait, would that make 7 of 9 a Disney princess? Man, dude, the best thing that could ever happen to me would be for Disney to buy the Trek franchise. Then I could actually start making money off of my original work. CBS, multi-million-dollar, and apparently, according to them, Discovery is just blowing it out of the field, apparently need to steal my money from my earlier work. I hope to God Disney buys the Trek franchise. Best thing that could ever happen to me. Isn't Riker a harassment lawsuit waiting to happen? Yes, I will agree that Riker doesn't do a lot better. The difference between Kirk and Riker is every time Riker gets into a battle, he generally gets the ship blown to hell and back and can't win. And Kirk actually wins battles. Beyond that, they have a lot in common. Would love to POW the musical Ice Capade. Okay. Star Trek Continues has a good episode about female captains. It is actually well written. I like Star Trek Continues. I haven't seen that episode. A lot of people have pointed it out to me. But I got to watch that because a lot of people continue to bring that up. Would you consider the Next Generation Starfleet a better Starfleet in terms of foreign policy and war preparation than the TNG Starfleet? Much less likely to help die. Darth Vader used TNG for both. So I'm going to assume, would you consider the original series Starfleet a better Starfleet in terms of foreign policy and war preparations than the TNG Starfleet? And my answer to that would be absolutely. 100%. The original series Starfleet was, by and far, one of the absolute, not one of the, but a lot better than the Next Generation. In every way, both in science and in military. They were prepared to defend their borders. They knew that they were soldiers, but they were also explorers and did scientific research. I think that Deep Space Nine Starfleet is a lot closer to the original series than the Next Generation ever was. By the way, guys, if you don't know, I will be doing a live show, which means that, well, I'm doing a live show right now. I will be doing kind of a call-in show. If you're interested, check out the Discord. Once you get to Discord, go and join the live guest. Click down there or go to the live guest after forum. Be prepared to be pulled in at any time. I'll probably be pulling in patrons first, but I'll try to get to everybody before we end. Neelix was a jealous boyfriend. He was, I agree. Was Star Trek better on the Blue Barrett Hera? Don't know what that means. Would like the original series to be better suited for fighting the Dominion, disregarding the tech disparity. Yes, Professor Janus. I think, assuming that we equalize the technology disparity, the original series the original series Starfleet would absolutely have been better prepared to take on the Dominion. Absolutely. Without a doubt. There's not even any conversation to it. Absolutely. Let's see. Nate Watson up in the house. Nate Watson single-handedly helping me out. By the way, guys, if you can and you want to see the channel grow, you want me to go to conventions, you want to make sure that I can feed myself at night, consider a super chat or going to patreon.com/Lore Reloaded. If you become a patron for as little as $1 a month, you win a chance to win an item. I generally do it every month. This month it'll be an Eagle Moss NX-01. Also, if you're a subscriber and you comment when this goes live, voice on demand, not talking to me right now, but voice on demand, you get a chance to win a Galaxy-class ship. If you're in the U.S., I'll definitely send it to you. If you're out of the United States, we can talk about it. If you don't like the fact that I'm not rich enough to send it outside the United States, you are more than welcome to fully fund me, and I will be happy to send it out. Nate Watson, maybe the sexism didn't go away, but just stopped being official policy, similar to how we have anti-sexual harassment laws, but harassment is still common. Voyager's doctor made 7 of 9 nines pervy catsuits. I think in the 90s, you still had some of that things that drew people that comes off as casual sexism. So I can kind of see that, I guess. Alexandra Sandu, look at the most popular romantic movies aimed at women mostly. Nobody calls it harassment assault. When you like the protagonist, that's romantic. Oh, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. What hypothesis can you give for why they shifted to more of a scientific basis and less military between original series and the Next Generation? So there's a couple of things to that. So first off, and I'll talk about the canon because that's more what I'm focused on, but we know that Gene Roddenberry, when he had a lot of control at the beginning of the Next Generation, more control than he ever had on the original series. A lot of people think that he was just like the man that headed the original series. Again, go check out Anti-Trekker's video. He breaks it down exquisitely. Gene didn't have near the power he pretends he did. But in The Next Generation, we really see him with more of the power. And he looked at it as, in the original series, we were investigating. It was the Western. We were trying to tame the space. Tame space. Tame all of the outer edges. In The Next Generation, we had done that. So now we're the top dog. And since we're on the top dog, since Undiscovered Country, that timeline gets a little mixed up in the real world, but we had tamed it, right? And so because of that, the Federation had no longer need for military. He went out of his way to make sure the military was so scaled down because he didn't need it, because he wanted a utopia where fighting wasn't that big of an issue. And that's why it was completely scaled down. Now, from an in-character canon, I think Q in Q Who says it best. He talks about it best. In Q Who, he talks about how humanity isn't prepared, how they're expanding too fast, how they've become too egotistical. The United Federation of Planets, Starfleet, defeated the Klingons. They won the Cold War. And coming off of that win, they were the top dogs in the brass, and their weapons were very powerful. They didn't really necessarily, they could put up a good fight against Klingons. The Cardassian border wars came to a stalemate because they wanted it to, because they didn't have to. They were so powerful in relation to all of the other species, and Q Who talks about this. And so they got lax, and they stopped innovating, and they stopped caring, and they thought they were above the military, and they thought they were above all this, and they thought they were evolved humans, and they didn't have to fight all of these things. Michael Swigger says, do you think there ever will be, or can be, a new Star Trek in the Prime timeline, or is the dream dead? Dream's probably dead. They might do it as a last hurrah. I don't know that you could do a good one in the Prime timeline. I don't know if you could do something everyone would like. There's a lot to it. The Federation Starfleet would be so powerful. The only way I would do it, and as I said, I've talked about this before, if I was to write it, I would cause a lot of internal struggle and strife within the Federation, because you would have all of these war elements and then all of these people who want to go back to a TNG era. And I think that could be interesting. But because of how powerful, just look at the Sovereign class ship, how powerful everything is, the power creep on the enemies that they would have to fight would be enormous. Yeah. Post-Voyager series could be good to see. I don't know. That's what I was talking about. By the way, guys, I'm going to start taking people in. If you're watching live and you're in the live guest, which you need to join the live guest if you want to talk to me, be prepared to be pulled in. It could be pulled in at any time, so be listening for the little ding, because I'm going to start pulling people in. If you're not in the live guest, even if you've joined the Discord, if you're not in live guest, I don't think you want to talk to me. So get in the live guest. It's easy to click on. There's people there right now. At Lore Reloaded, I think you could make a series in the Prime timeline. I have a few ideas I've been toying with, but CBS won't take them, so it's a moot point. We'll just keep bugging them. You know, something interesting. I'm thinking about doing a giveaway. I don't know. So I'm going to talk to you guys about this. Star Trek Online, then we'll start taking some calls. So you can create different scenarios in Star Trek Online. I was thinking of actually having doing a $100 giveaway, and I would do it through their points or whatever, the ARC points. And the way it works, really easy. You would create a scenario during the Dominion War, and whoever creates the best scenario or the funnest scenario would get the $100 worth of points. I think that'd be fun, and would get interest in Star Trek Online. I think it'd be interesting. All right, so we're gonna start pulling people in. First, we'll start with patrons, then we'll go down from there. If there are patrons in there, I don't know if there are. Extreme Gamer, I'm pulling you in. I'm going to give a brief pause so catches up and Extreme Gamer knows that he's going to get pulled in. Once I pull you in, then I'm going to put you in the guest after forum. Before I pull Extreme Gamer, then though, it's a small amount, but thanks for your channel, Micah. Thanks for all you can do, guys. Don't ever give something that's like, oh, this is small or whatever. Everything helps out. So anything you guys want to give, that's great. Whether it's $1 or more, doesn't matter. Don't ever call it small. It all matters. It all helps. And if I only had the larger amounts and not the smaller amounts, I would still be in the exact same space. I would be unable to continue. So both sides help. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we got Extreme Gamer in with us. Extreme Gamer, welcome to the show. Of course, this is push to talk, so you may have to set that up.
No, it's set up already.
You got it up. What's going on, brother?
Before we start, can we make sure everyone can hear me? Because last time that didn't work, and I was just talking to no one, just you. Actually, everyone else actually could not hear me at all.
I can hear you pretty good. We'll see. I think everybody should be able to hear you too in the chat. Let us know if you can hear him. But yeah, I can hear you fine.
No, I know you could hear me. Like last time, I was looking back at it, and when I actually looked on the live stream, no one can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you fine. People telling me they can hear you, buddy.
Yeah, it was out there. So.
Yep. So what's going on? Well, before Laughable Larry, thank you so much for the donation. So what's going on, brother? Talk to me. Are we going to be talking about Kirk, or what do you want to talk about?
I'll just answer whatever question you have, really. But I will say this is probably my most least knowledgeable series of all the Star Treks. So
okay,
I can compare, but I won't be able to get very specifics about.
Have you seen the original series though?
Oh, I have seen it, but it's my least knowledgeable.
Ah, okay. Well, I mean, what do you think about Kirk? Do you think he is a pervert, somebody who should not be around women, or do you think he just gets a bad rap?
Honestly, I feel it is blown out of proportion of what he actually does, because if you look at it, I saw a video on him before similar to Picard and his blown out portion of his love of Earl Grey. If you actually look over, he orders it very little, and I say he thinks the exact same with Kirk. If you actually look at it, say, the person who would get that title more, sir, to be honest.
All right, and we got a super chat for Kitty Cat. Totally deserves temptation treats. That will literally go towards him. I'll use that money to buy it for him. Whoops, sorry, buddy. Yeah, I think you were the one that said that beforehand, and I can somewhat see that and agree with that. But let me ask you this, because some of it may go too far. So even if we assume that it's not that bad, that it's overblown, do you think there's any time that he ever goes over, or things that weren't accepting for our current time? You know what I'm saying? So even if it's only 2 times, do you think that it's still completely unacceptable, or is it just people are pretty triggered, pretty snowflakey?
See, this is where my lack of knowledge comes in very specific, so I can't really remember exactly what he does a lot of time. So.
Okay, I got you. What do you think about Janeway?
Unfortunate situation. That's what. She was put in a situation where any captain would struggle to manage, but I feel she was just idiotic to try to maintain Starfleet principles and Federation to keep. She could have saved everyone's lives, got home quicker, and in the end we actually see, like, in the future, Janeway comes back and she said she loses about another 22 crewmen on the way home, which could have been all saved, which they'd all saved because she abandoned her Starfleet's principles and just broke the Temporal Prime Directive and came back and just changed the past, which Federation will be against. So she eventually realized her mistake and came back, but it was too late. It was last minute change, really.
And she screwed up so many other people doing that. I mean, there were children in there by the crew who no longer exist because of her. So to save 20 people, she ensured that children didn't exist anymore. So, you know, just one of the greatest captains alive, really, when you look at it like that. It's my sarcasm. All right, brother, you got anything else you want to
add? Well, I don't know. About any particular topic, or just...
Yeah, before you go, because there are other people coming in. Anything you want to talk about specifically, or anything to add to it, or...
Not really specific, to be honest.
All right, man. Well, we'll get you back on the next one. I know you like being on these, so message me what kind of show you're interested in, and next time I'm around that topic, I'll make sure to get you on so we can talk a little bit longer. Sound good?
Yeah, perfect.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later. Fantastic. Looking at what you guys are talking about, Micah Leith, yes, exactly. She couldn't decide to hold on to Starfleet principles or let them go. Was in reference to not talking to me. Cisco would keep to principles, I think. And Mr. Pete says, blasted. Old Fire, we got you in, brother. Make sure you got the push to talk. I'll give it a second to make sure you can catch on with us. While we're waiting on Old Fire to do push to talk, guys, if you want to be a part of this, join my Discord. It's in the description. Then go to live guest, and I will pull you in if we got time. If you want to talk, great. If we don't want to talk, that works too. Old Fire, you there? What's up, brother?
Not a lot. How are you doing?
Dude, I'm living a dream. You're a part of the Star Trek Online fleet, right?
I am, yes. I have not been very active recently, but I am.
You've probably been more active than me. I got some stuff coming up on that I want to talk to you. You and Dramas. This is kind of going off topic, but I need to get with you and Dramas because I see how Trek Yards is doing their fleet, and I think I got a couple ideas. But for this topic, what's going on, brother?
Well, first of all, for the fleet, I'd love to get more involved if you figure that out. And for the Kirk thing, I'm somewhat in the same boat as Extreme, unfortunately. The original series is not my most knowledgeable series, certainly. But I will say that I agree with the first point being that, I do think that his sexism and misogyny is overblown, much in the same way that, Picard's ordering of Earl Grey tea is overblown. And then you brought up the specific point of the Mirror episode, which is actually the last episode that I watched as well, wherein we actually see him take advantage, essentially, of the captain's woman of the Mirror universe. And I think a very good point to keep in mind there is that that's a situation wherein he had to think about his own crew first. So it was very much a situation of, what's the lesser evil here? Should I essentially go against moral standards and take advantage of this person? Or should I take care of my crew first?
Sure, but what I was more talking about, and I agree with you there, and I really wasn't even talking about that piece. If you remember the very last scene, to me, he came off extremely creepy.
I can see that, yeah, absolutely.
And that I think that more talks to the way he looks, right? The way the optics of it and the way he treats women comes off that way. And I can somewhat agree with you that it's more optics than anything else. It's kind of like his, how everybody makes fun of the way he talks?
Oh, yeah.
If you've watched the actual original series or even the movies, he isn't as bad as people make it out to be. It's like they're making fun of an exaggeration of him. The parody is of a parody. He does have that talking, that nuance when he talks, but he's not as bad as people make him out to be.
Yeah, I can absolutely agree with that. So it is certainly an issue of a parody being overblown to an extent. And then, of course, there's also the extent of their other considerations. But at the same time, I will say that that classic perception of Kirk being this kind of womanizing, sort of a gallivanting, almost like a classical image of a pirate gallivanting around the ocean, is very accurate for Kirk.
Right. We, by the way, a lot of people think you're Hal.
I have gone through different names being called for my voice, depending on what my throat feels like that day. I believe last time I was told that I sounded like the epic voice guy.
Nah, probably. Let's see. Michael Swigger says, Janeway was awesome in that she shows that not all leaders are highly competent. Janeway was awful, just like some real military commanders in my experience. I somewhat disagree. I just think she was one of the best villains that we've ever seen. Awesome.
Yeah, I did see that episode of yours, and to an extent I agree, but at the same time I also think that there's a certain issue there wherein Janeway was, to me anyway, a very entertaining figure to watch, a very entertaining captain to watch on screen. So even though there were times when it felt like, why are you doing this? This is incredibly stupid of you, she was always an entertaining person to watch at the very least, which is of course the point of television.
Sure. I'm not saying that's not. I just wish she had been written a little bit better so that she doesn't look the way she does. Because Kate Mulgrew is just awesome, in my opinion. All right, brother, you got anything else you want to add or not really?
I think I lost you. I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Great. So I was about to say, was there anything else you want to add to it or not really?
No, not really. I'm enjoying the stream so far. Let's get someone else in here.
I do it for you, brother. All right, before you go, though, say, Dave, please don't do that, Dave, and then start singing Daisy.
Dave, please don't do that, Dave. I don't know how Daisy goes. I'm sorry, I haven't seen the movie.
You haven't ever been. Someone's never sung the Daisy song. Daisy, Daisy.
No, I don't believe anybody has ever sung that song to me, and I've never seen the movie.
Fail, old fire.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm a terrible nerd.
I said good day, sir. All right. So we got that one. I'm sorry, Kirk, but I calculate that your variables aren't sexy. I'm afraid I should have had him say that. By the way, old fire, I was messing with you, buddy. I hope you didn't get mad. Going to be ending it quite soon, but I'm going to try to get everybody before we go. Let's see. Let's pull below average. Yeah, below average. Yeah. And we got below average 355 on. It is never a party unless below average is here. How you doing, sir?
Hello, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well. Just living the dream. So you about here to talk to me about Kirk, good sir?
Oh yeah, I can share my opinions on that. Whatever you like.
Sure. Go ahead. Talk me through it. You like Kirk? Was he a sexist? Does he deserve to be in jail?
Well, by our modern standards, I'd say he's a little bit on the sexist side, but I wouldn't go overboard with it. In the 1950s, he was a very moderate kind of guy. Now, if you're comparing him to like the later captains that came after, like Picard or something, they're almost two opposite figures, I'd say. I think you've mentioned before that the Next Generation sort of has this feel of like a almost more science fiction, romance, everything's perfect to it. And right. I think Kirk fits more into like a space pirate, you say. Not quite a pirate, but
Right, and I think that's fair. He's being judged against 2018 standards, especially in a time when, and I don't want to get too much into it, but in a time when people, after having sex with you, can withdraw consent, even though consent was given at the time. I think that it's, I think you could almost see him as progressive in the 70s to that aspect. Now, it's relative, obviously, because we wouldn't call it progressive. Yeah. But I think that's a good point that you could probably say is progressive. Because, again, when you look at the show as a whole, I would agree that it really did a lot to prop women up, relatively, and to bring different races together, different ethnicities.
Yeah, I mean, so you had, in the 1950s, wherever you had Lieutenant Uhura, who, had black female on a command bridge. In real life, you would never see that then.
And an interracial kiss. I mean, they didn't do it outright, but they had to have them controlled or whatever. But they did have the interracial, or at least the first interracial for Star Trek. It was a really big deal then, so there was that.
Yeah, I remember. I've seen that too. I would have liked to have been around at that time just to see, like, obviously the internet didn't exist, but if something like that had happened, just what is the reaction to something like that? Even I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it would have been interesting if they had internet or something like that to see what people were saying about it.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt, in my mind.
I think it's fair. So let me say this. Sorry, I'm switching stuff around. I think it's fair when people come out and say, you're just hating on it right now. So let's take a look at Discovery. I'm not a fan of Discovery, so don't take this that way. But when some people say, you're just hating it right now, you're just hating it because of the PC culture, blah, 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 blah. I think there's a kernel of truth in some instances where things that we hate right now, in about 10 years, we're going to look at it different. Or things that we like right now, in 10 years, we're going to look at it differently. So looking at it in different aspects and looking at it at people at the time for the interracial kiss, I bet a lot of people had issues with that. It's possible you even see people saying, oh, why are they bringing this political correct stuff there? So that's a good point, I think.
Yeah, there is that idea to it. And also just like history changes the way you view things. Like if you want to go to a more modern Star Trek series, you could look at Deep Space Nine, like that was made around the same time as, you know, the 9/11 Iraq War and all that stuff starting. But then having gone through that and looking back at it, you can sort of see it through a different lens, through a different focal point almost.
Right. RJ Pumpkin says, I know he said this in a while back, so people don't get mad at me. He says, I'm a guy, and I would let Kirk take me to Pound Town. Anyone else? Would you let Kirk take you to Pound Town, below average?
Oh, well, I mean, hey, it's 2018, and he's a starship captain. He can probably get me places. I mean, hey, you got to do what you got to do.
I mean, there you go. I'm right there with you, buddy. I'm right there with you.
Make some connections. Literally and figuratively.
That's horrible. Did the captain of the USS Saratoga get out of the One second. Did the captain of the USS Saratoga get out of the USS Saratoga? Blew up at Wolf 359. Don't know what that means. I don't think so. All right, brother. You have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I've got my bases covered pretty well. I've answered the most important pressing question about whether I would let Kirk go to Pound Town. So I think we're all squared away.
And you're the only one I'm going to ask, so you're going to have that distinguishment. I mean, you can go to your family and send them to this stream and let them know that you answered that question. They're going to have to wait for it and find it.
Awesome. I want a badge for that in the Discord or something.
Oh, dude, if I could give badges, that would be awesome. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, see ya.
Mike Leith says that was the best part of progressiveness in Star Trek pre-Star Trek The Discovery. They were not blatant about it. They just did it and made it normal. I absolutely agree. That's one of the things I love about Deep Space Nine, and it makes me so frustrated when it comes to Discovery. Deep Space Nine, for me, did progressive opinions a lot better. There were some times that they kind of threw it in your face. Not generally, in my opinion. For instance, and I've talked to you guys about this, I grew up in a pretty conservative household. Homosexuality was not something that was necessarily approved of. And Deep Space Nine was one of the first to normalize it, which was pretty interesting to see it when I was that young. And they had some interesting conversations about not the Quark scene, but I'm trying to think, because there was some transsexual conversations in there. It wasn't as big as the homosexuality. And they did a great chance, I think, in bringing real life stuff that was happening. Below Average talks about 9/11. And I don't remember necessarily them bringing that in, but there was issues with poverty and wanting to create towns for the poor, and DS9 addressed that. They had an entire really good episode about it. And that's, I guess, why I get so frustrated with Discovery and this make the Empire great again BS. And when people hear me say that and hear me put down the make the Empire great again, they assume it's because I'm a Trumper or I'm a heavy conservative or yada, yada, yada. I've never really talked about what my feelings truly are on it. But it pisses me off because all it does is it just galvanizes and splits Star Trek, and it just makes people who are conservative get more pissed off and not want to watch Star Trek and talk negative about it and get in fights with other people, and it emboldens the left like they're doing some kind of damn thing right. And then you got Star Trek Online, who is selling the hat make the Empire great again, because why the hell not? I mean, we might as well get rid of every conservative and not let them listen or give them a good idea. Deep Space Nine changed my mind, or at least put kernels in my head that made me question things. And it is specifically because they normalized it and they tried to have a conversation and they didn't try to turn it into this just BS. And a lot of people say in 10 years you're going to think different. I'm never going to think different about that. Ever. Was Ben Sisko justified to hold a grudge against Captain Jean-Luc Picard when he should have blamed Locutus of Borg for killing his wife? I think that was very human. I think it made him relatable. I liked that. I think that it instantly gravitated towards him because he did what, humans actually do. Talking about old time double standards, not sure what it means, but I find Kirk sleazy-ish, while Clark Gable's cowboy looks were charming. Okay. Somebody's heading out. As I said, the Discovery Klingons were clearly based. Ryan, relax, buddy. Relax. All right. So, I'm going to bring in a couple more people, then I guess we are going to be done. Dead Coder was in here first. Dead Coder, what's going on? You got to be pushed to talk, and while you're setting that up, just let me know, and I can talk to people while we wait. And I guess my editor is done listening to this, so there's that. If anything...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. What's going on, brother? Well, I could hear you. Can't hear you now.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Good deal. If you can turn me down, if you're listening to the live stream, what's going on, brother?
Okay. Can you hear me? I can hear you now. Okay. So I actually have a defense of Janeway's actions in Endgame.
Okay. Can you turn, I don't know if you're listening to live stream, can you turn the live stream down for me, please? I'm hearing myself echo.
Okay, how's that now?
I can't hear myself now, so we're doing good. All right, so continue on.
Hello.
Yeah, sounds good now. So you said you had a defensive endgame?
Can you? Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
At this point, Voyager's timeline is completely broken due to all the time travel shenanigans. It's bad enough that it caused Braxton to go insane, and it caused Voyager's continuity problems. Janeway literally couldn't make it any worse. It's like adding to the smell of urine in New York City. You can't make the problem any worse, so it's okay.
Okay. Would we agree that if you did an action that didn't, that made it so that a person didn't exist, that is similar to killing them?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Okay, it's a related concept.
Would you say it's on par with?
Not really on par with.
Okay.
In same category, yes, but not really equivalent.
Which is worse?
Well, actually, killing them is significantly worse. It's kind of like, okay, it's kind of like choosing to use a condom during sex. I mean, you don't, and then pregnancy can result, and then you've got a problem. And then a person could exist, potentially. But if you choose not to, then you're foregoing the timeline where such a person could potentially exist. In this case, I kind of view it the same, that Janeway simply went with basically an abortion option.
Janeway went with an abortion option. So, because I think, are you trying to anticipate where I'm going with this argument with the kids that no longer exist?
Pretty much.
Okay.
In my mind, it's more of, it's not so much that she murdered the kids, it's more along the lines of she was trying to reduce loss of life, and in her mind, the time travel was not murder.
Do you have kids?
I'm infertile.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get too personal with you. I'm curious. So let me ask you this: if you wanted to have kids, if at any point you or someone wanted to have kids, and they decide not to have kids, and like you say, use a condom, we would agree that's okay, right?
Yes.
What if I made it so that person couldn't have kids? Is that okay?
That would depend. Are you going...
Because I know that if you have kids, that's probably going to make it so that I'll never be able to see someone again for whatever crazy scenario we want to put. So I make it so that you don't have kids and you don't get a choice to have those kids.
That is a issue. However, that is not equivalent because we don't know that her actions directly prevented those people from having said children.
We do. We know because it's because of the butterfly effect. We know because in other Trek timelines, anytime they changed the timeline, it changed everything to happen. We know that the last episode of The Next Generation, where Picard goes into the future and sees all the things that happens in the future, that never happens, and it's an alternate reality because he tells them all about it. We know that when you go back in time, both in the series and in real life, changing the timeline changes everything going forward, and arguably going backwards.
Counterpoint, the mirror universe has completely different events and yet has mostly the same people, and the only difference between the people is that the mirror universe are mostly exaggerations. So, okay, yes, the butterfly effect is a thing, but we don't know that it would actually completely prevent said people from existing in this context because we've seen cases where radically different timelines yielded very similar people.
I find that a weak argument, but let's go with your argument. Let me ask you this. So if a person is going to have a kid or has kids, and I say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do an action that's going to take your kids away from you. There's a good, you may still have them. There's a chance. There's a chance you won't. And you don't get to decide about it. I do. And good luck on rolling those dice. Is that okay?
No, but I think in Janeway's mind, and bear in mind, Janeway was completely insane. The amount of... Okay, how do I word this? Yes, that was bad. However, in Janeway's mind, her very diseased mind, she was probably trying to reduce loss of life, and I can at least accept that, even though I can admit she probably had some logical flaws in that.
Sure, I'm not saying that Janeway wasn't doing what she thought was best or that she didn't save some lives doing. In fact, I mean, arguably, if you wanted to go from your route, you could say that the destruction of the Borg, or at least the insane crippling of the Borg, from the Vulcan proverb, the few versus the many, may have been...
The many outweigh the few.
Right. You could argue that that was better because of that, right?
You could.
So I'm not saying that there aren't arguments for why what she did ultimately may be considered a good thing overall for the Alpha Delta for the universe. Really, there's no way that I could ever see her as a good person in that. I think you agree that she's coming from a very broken point of view. And
I do.
I think that if Gul Dukat had done this, or if I don't know, pick whatever villain you want to pick, had done it, we'd be sitting here agreeing that that was the worst thing that they could have ever done.
Not necessarily, but it is very possible. And also, I was not defending Janeway on murder on that one. I was just defending her for violation of the Temporal Prime Directive because because she knows the consequences on this one, and it's basically, well, adding more timeline screwery to Voyager, and no one would even notice that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I agree. I was taking a look, see if anyone else brought up some people were bringing up the fact that that when she went back in time, that it might be okay because you still have that alternate timeline. That going back just creates a new timeline, so you still have both. And there's some evidence for that. I don't think it's necessarily... I think that could be a good argument for it, too. There was one question I saw that I thought would be interesting for us. I'm trying to find it real quick. But, yeah, I mean, again, the Temporal Timeline. Do you watch SF Debris by chance?
I am a fan and actually built a series that was inspired on it called Dead Coders Reviews, where I review Code Lyoko episodes and then make vulgar jokes.
Nice. Have you seen his in-game review?
Yes, I have seen his in-game review, and I agree with his points on a lot of it. However, I don't think it was as bad of a finale as he thinks it was, because I feel like his evaluation, he's judging Endgame based on the problems with other episodes rather than Endgame, and I felt that the score was unfair based on that. Although he did raise a bunch of good points with it.
Well, I just liked his ending where he tried to explain why the temporal police didn't come after her, which, loosely put, is they... So what happened was the Borg had taken over. That instead of you seeing Voyager getting there, you saw Earth was assimilated and the Borg had taken over the Alpha Quadrant. And so Janeway goes back in time with her tech and does it to defeat the Borg. And the reason why the temporal people didn't step in was because the Borg taking over wasn't what was supposed to happen. And so they let her go and bypass it. But there are always consequences to breaking the rules, and factions were then able to form in the past that wanted to fight the temporal agents, and now you have the Cold War that started when Enterprise started, which would have been an interesting tie-in, I think. But anyway, so do you still have your channel, Dead Coder Reviews?
It's not a channel, it's just a blog.
Okay, does it still exist?
It does. I don't have time to update it very often, though. The last review, I think I can't remember which one it was. I think it was either William Returns or it was Lost at Sea. One of the random Season 4 episodes with writing problems.
Right. All right, brother. Well, do you have anything else you want to add before I send you over?
2 things.
Sure.
Number 1 is a random theory I've had about the original series sets and why they look so outdated compared to Enterprise and Next Generation era. My theory is that every century has at least one randomly tacky decade, kind of like how the 1900s, we had the 80s, and everything looked remarkably worse, particularly haircuts. And my theory is that the original series' Enterprise was built during the 23rd century's tacky decade.
Well, the funny thing about that is, first off, I think Enterprise actually did a pretty good job of melding and at least making it seem reasonable. And I've read them up a lot, but Anti-Tracker brought up a good point when I was talking with him at some point. LED displays and things like that are very, very impractical generally because buttons and knobs have a far less chance of breaking or not working, whereas an LED can go down pretty easily. And when you look at even current technology, generally you see more knobs and buttons and things because they are more likely not to break down than an LED screen. For me, I don't care about the visual reboot. I don't know how you feel about it, but with Discovery, I think that if they had it in the original series, they would have used it. So the visual reboot doesn't bug me all that much. I don't know how you feel, but the tacky thing's funny. What was your other point?
Honestly, it was just a random thought on you could make a series in the Prime timeline, and because there was a lot of stuff left over in the 21st century episodes that you could work with. For example, there was an episode.
You cut off after there was an episode.
Sorry, the episode "Unnatural Selection," where basically you had a semi-rogue but okay with Starfleet genetic engineering operation. You could probably work with that and have an uprising of genetically engineered people, and you could basically call it the second eugenics wars by just having genetically engineered people creating a rogue status or it's within an outlying system. That could easily create an entire series around the politics associated with it, as well as their attempts to defend themselves from the attacks by the Federation, and the Federation basically treating them as basically a terrorist group. Kind of like what should have gone on with the Maquis, but about 1,000 times worse.
Yeah, well, that could be interesting. I agree. Yeah, I don't hate it. All right, brother. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, guys. Man, you guys like to talk about completely separate things sometimes. What's up with that? By the way, I completely agree with Mr. Pete that there are quite a few conservative atheists. I think a lot more than you think there would be. I think that conservative atheists have a large number within the ranks. They just don't go out of their way, because why would you want to get called a neo-Nazi when it's not worth your time? You'll just make decisions with your votes and screw over liberal atheists who aren't willing to talk. Janeway should be the first person the Federation puts to death. What? Crazy. Let's see. You guys are talking about such different things, I can't even bring it up. What's Stephen Roberts say, Alexandra? Let's bring Stephen Roberts up. I can't find Stephen Roberts, so we can't address it. All right, guys. Going to do one more, and then and we'll take a look at it. Alexandria Sandu, my redundant fear is that conservatives are turning into alt-right. The best way to stop that from happening, not that I'm going to get political, is to talk to them, not call them alt-right, not call them neo-Nazis, and challenge their ideas. But we're not going to do that, because screw that, when you can call everyone a Nazi and be in your own echo chamber. We got Terror of Death. What is going on, brother? Glad to have you on. Going to give you a second to do the push-to-talk thing. Make sure you're still with us. Or you just moved yourself out. If he moves himself out again, we'll end with that. Guys, let me know your questions. We're going to be moving towards the end. Laughable Larry says, Lore, why didn't the Temporal Police stop Janeway from changing the past? I kind of look at that similar to how I look at Doctor Who. I think there are fixed points in time. Where Doctor Who can't change it. But I think things happened in the past that always happened that the temporal agents turn their back to, like fixed points that they can't go back, like First Contact. Ultimately, ZS is right. It's plot armor. But again, I think that the only way to explain it is that there are things that they did allow to happen before its formation, and thus it always happened. Alexandria Sandu, it started with atheism and conservatives. The two are not as separate as you'd think, is all I'm saying. All right, let's try Terror of Death one more time, and then we'll end it unless you guys got anything you want to talk about. Terror of Death, brother, you want to come in, or you gotta not?
I'm here.
You got it.
I'm here.
What's going on, brother?
Not much. I really don't know what to talk about.
Well, I mean, what do you think about Kirk? Is he a perv? Is he a good guy? What's your opinions?
I mean, yeah, he's slightly a perv, but all men were back in those days, so you kind of have to roll the dice.
There you go. So, I mean, are there anything on the shows that I've talked about that you want to talk about really quick, or are you just wanting to say hi?
Well, yeah, just say hi, but also, I would actually like to talk about the ending of Battlestar Galactica 03.
Well, that seems like a good thing to do on a Trek stream. What specifically about the ending do you want to discuss?
How bad it was and how you could have kind of done it slightly different.
So you're talking about the reimagined Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah, the 03 one.
Well, what exactly didn't you like about it?
The whole scuttling of the fleet thing.
I mean, I think that's a little bit unrealistic. The scuttling of the fleet, I don't necessarily disagree with. Because when you look at their conditions, when you watch it as a whole, I can see why they might want to let that go. I don't necessarily agree that people would want to go onto the land and have no technology or no of the ability to live, no medicine or anything. Most of them died because of that.
That's what I agree with. Like, right. You didn't have to really scuttle the entire fleet. I mean, you could have landed everyone there and put the few ships that were left into, or buried them, or put them on the moon or something like that.
Well, I can understand why they scuttled the fleet. So, taking a look at it, before we get into that, guys, it's getting dangerously close to arguing over politics, which I'm very happy to shut down easily, regardless of whether you're a good friend of the show or not. Just letting you guys know. So here's my thing. If you looked at the entire series, they had been on this long journey, and ultimately they continued to watch more and more people die by the thousands, stayed on these little tiny ships that was subpar standard, little medicine, and ultimately they even ran out of food and had to eat like this paste. that if you remember, they had to jump to get this like paste that tasted horrible. They didn't even have food anymore. They couldn't support creating vegetables and things. And so after doing that for years upon years upon years, and watching people die and having to run and getting destroyed, I can understand saying, you know what? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want anything to do with space travel. Let's live on the planet, you know?
I can agree with that. My whole thing is that you should have put the shit where having, and when the next humanity got advanced enough, saying pretty much having a message come down saying, "Hi, we're your ancestors. Don't the stuff we're about to talk about. You think you do in the apocalypse."
Yeah, but I mean that goes back to the entire point of the series. All of this has happened before, and all this will happen again. They wanted to break that, and the only way to break that is to almost completely start from scratch. You know, I mean that was why. I mean, when you watch the movies and everything, and you put it into context, you see how they had done this for generations. Like, it's really arguable if the humans in Reimagined were even humans because they forgot who they were. Remember, they had the 7 tribes of Kobold, or 8 tribes.
Yeah.
How many ever tribes? And the 7th tribe they thought were human, but they weren't. Those were actually the Cylons. The entire thing was there was this huge war, the Lords of Kobold, there was this huge war between 6 of the tribes and the Cylons. They all went their own way and then made up a mythos where they were all humans and forgot about what would happen. And really, when you dive deep into it, you see how sometimes it was the humans doing it, sometimes it was the Cylons doing it, sometimes Cylons did it to Cylons, and it was just so incestuous.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking to a lore channel, so I look deep and I look unreasonably into the history of stuff like this. But I mean, that's...
Oh, I have no problem with that. My family is literally 3 generations of science fiction nerds. So I get where you're coming from.
Right. But, I mean, that was just my thoughts on it. One quick thing not related to this. Guys, I know a lot of you are getting kind of frustrated. We can have conversations, and you can have conversations about it when it comes to atheism, conservatism, stuff like that. But this isn't a channel for atheism. This isn't a channel for conservatism. It's more about us having fun about lore and stuff like that. I was just warning you because we're talking about hating on conservative atheists, and that's getting near my border. And I'm just letting you know. And sometimes the channel's not for people. So if you don't like that, then I would hate to see you go, but that's what it is. So anyway, back to what we were talking about, Terror. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I could see why they wouldn't want to do that, especially to allow the next generation to advance and stuff. Almost like Moana, in a way. But... Yeah. I can also understand just being done with it, though it makes no sense. It's like, let's all go on this planet where most of us are going to die from sickness or from other animals or whatever and have no way to defend ourselves. That doesn't make any sense to me either.
That's something that kind of pissed me off.
But I see what you're doing. Sorry, what were you about to say?
Oh, I was actually going to switch over to a topic that I've actually talked to you about before on your channel.
Sweet. All right, one more, and then I think we'll call it a night. What do you want to talk about?
Well, the whole ST ship design, such as my personal favorite, the Luna class or USS Titan.
So I'm sorry, you said the Star Trek ship designs? You're breaking up a little bit. All right.
Sorry, the Star Trek Online ship designs.
What specifically? Sorry, 1 second.
The Luna class.
Sure. What, for telling the truth that they want to kill conservatives? Yes, Lance. Yes. What about the Luna class? Just my thoughts on it, or?
Well, that, and also I think you were kind of hasty in calling it a science vessel when it actually does have very capable offensive and defensive systems.
I mean, what would you call it then? If not a science vessel.
It would be sort of be sort of a military in the class of military exploration.
I don't necessarily disagree. When you look at everything that's post-Dominion War, and really the starting of post-Wolf 359, it has a dual process. It reminds me of the original series, like we were talking about before, where it's more multi-purpose. Probably the reason I said that is I didn't know a lot about the Luna class, and the first thing that pops up is how it's a science vessel, quote-unquote.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I think that, because I did look at it after we had that conversation.
Thank you.
I would agree that it reminds me a little bit of like the Intrepid in a way, more souped up, obviously, but that it is meant to be able to fight, but has a purpose of a scientific edge there. Though you could use it in a war if you wanted to. So I mean, I would agree with you. You said that's your favorite class.
Yes, I really love that class. It's kind of like my. I don't want to say baby because that would be too weird, but yeah, kind of like that. If you know what I mean. I mean, it essentially has... It's the perfect balance between, in my opinion, offensive and defensive. Like, not too overpowered like the Sovereign, but still enough to literally give somebody a good beating, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad class. I don't hate it. All right, brother. Well, thanks for coming on.
All right, thank you. By the way, just one last thing. Love your channel. Love everything you do. I literally came in like 10,000 subscribers, and I love seeing this channel grow. So keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, I love you, Terror of Death. I love you, brother. All right, see you, man.
Adios.
All right, Lance Heaps. Well, that is all I needed to hear. I do think I was overreacting, though joking about killing people is no joke. If I see anybody joking about killing people... they get one warning and they get timeout and then they get banned. I don't care who you are. So I don't know if there was a joke that I missed or whatever, but that is something I won't deal with. At Lore Reloaded, what do you think the people's perspective of the Federation was? Do you think that there was lingering nationalism, feelings of wishing to break off from the Federation still present? During when, Michael Leith? I'm not sure when you're talking about it. If you meant after the Dominion War, I don't know. After the Dominion War, I could see people wanting to break off or not be a part of what is now a military, right? During the Next Generation, what do you think about the people's perspective of the Federation was? I think not during the Next Generation. The Next Generation era kind of reminds me of... I'm trying to think. Maybe... And I don't want to get too far into it, but when you look at the United States after World War II, I think that reminds me a lot of the Next Generation. Well, no, that wouldn't be right at all. I don't know a good example. I think that during the Next Generation, the Federation believed that it couldn't be destroyed, it couldn't be stopped. Most planets believe that. Most planets believe that they were backing the right horse. So I don't think that many. I think many would be a part of the scaling down. I don't really. Yeah, I don't know. At Random Crusader, is Poland the Mexico of Europe? I generally don't answer questions like that. I would say no, though. I generally don't answer. Since Tuesday, Miranda had used his post 2293. Why could the Constitution class ship filling some of the secondary Starfleet? I don't think the Constitution had the hull that the Miranda class did, which is why we saw it. Laura, I'd love to hear how you got into Star Trek one day. You clearly have a huge passion and knowledge. I think the first time I got into Star Trek was when I was a kid. I don't know if I was in my teens or not. It was with The Next Generation. I started watching The Next Generation, and I just fell in love with it. Deep Space Nine is really where I started kicking into high gear. I can't even watch The Next Generation with the same appreciation I used to after Deep Space Nine. let's see. I think the ships were built for war just in case, and then a pacifistic class like science. During the Next Generation, they were built with only thinking about the Klingons in mind, the Cardassians in mind. I do think that the more I research, the more I'm convinced the galaxy was a response to the Cardassian border wars, but they only did enough to win the Cardassian border wars, not really to prepare for what was coming up. By the way, guys, I know it's kind of tumultuous. I don't necessarily mind us talking or joking or stuff. I just don't want it to get serious. For those who don't know, I used to have... I've been doing YouTube a lot, and this was the first time that I've done something that's been this successful. And I had a channel that was a political channel. I had a gaming channel. I tried different things. And the political channel was a real big waste of my time. And I don't like the conversations that come from it. There might come a time when I create another channel once this one has completely taken off and I might have a team. But I don't mind us joking. I don't mind us having, taking jabs jokingly. But if we're starting to talk about getting really into it or debating things and it's not related to the lore, then I don't have any interest in it. So like when we talk about Lorca and how that was supposed to be a reference to Trump, I think it's fair to have that conversation and to bring a dichotomy and even talk about at that point why Trump may or may not be the best. But I don't just want to talk about it unless it's related to the lore. And I know that's a little... I know it's hard. I know the line is gray, and I apologize for that, but it's the best way I know how to do the channel. I don't want to completely cut it off, but I don't want to go too deep into it. And I apologize if that's frustrating for you guys. I really do. What would of Cardassian think if 100 Constitution-class ships were to fight then during the Federation Cardassian border wars? It depends on what episode we're talking about with the Cardassian border wars, because some of the ships of the Cardassians suck. And so 100... I mean, I'm not saying the Cardassians wouldn't win, but 100 Constitutions versus 10 Galore-class ships... You'd probably lose a couple of Galore-class ships. Alexandra Sandu, are there any elaborated fanfic plots following Deep Space Nine, like Where's the Federation? I've seen a few, but not many. Not a lot. None that I'm impressed with. Would you consider doing a video on Tuvix and how horrible that was? Yeah, because that's what I need. A lot of people getting pissed off. I think Tuvix... I think Tuvix was cold-blooded murder. I think her killing Tuvix was the worst thing Janeway had honestly ever done, or arguably so. I mean, I'm sure people will bring up stuff that'll get me as mad. There was a being that was begging for his life, and she kills him for two individuals who were her friends. Let's not beat around the bush here. Tuvix had the ability to do both security, because he was doing it, and he was doing it well, and what Neelix did. He had both. He had the knowledge from both. And she did murder him. And she murdered him because she wanted to bring her friends back. And when people say... And it's unjustifiable, and it's not Starfleet. There's an episode in Deep Space Nine where, and I forget what it's called, but it's like a court drama. It's really interesting because they kind of break the fourth wall, where they look and talk directly to the audience. And Worf fired on a ship that he thought was an enemy ship, but it was actually a freighter. And at the end of it, he admits he got off on a technicality. He got off because the Klingon Empire was being dishonorable. But he said, even though I got off, I would have fired anyway. I had the bloodlust that they were talking about. I went on a technicality, but really they were right about me. And Cisco looks at him and he's like, you're darn right that you are in the wrong. You are a Starfleet officer, and a Starfleet officer means that you give your life for other people. You check, and that may mean that you get you and yourself killed, but you don't kill innocents, even if it means that your ship is destroyed. You are a Starfleet officer. And I think that perfectly juxtaposed against the murder that Janeway did of Tuvix. And it's one of the very, very big low points of Janeway's character. Max6346, do you think the Oberth could have been in some battles, Wolf 359, Sector 001, because of their sensor capabilities? They could be used to get detailed scans of the cubes and be out of combat. I think they were throwing everything they had, including the kitchen sink, and that's why Oberths were there. I think they had every understanding that the Oberth was going to die, but they were just trying everything they could. If I was being generous, I might say that, yes, they had them there for the scans, but it was stupid, and again, it was getting people killed. But if I'm being generous, then yes, they had the ability to scan, because it's basically a laboratory on nacelles. What are the needs of the many outweighs the needs of the few, right? Tuvok, his family, and Neelix against Tuvok, one individual. Yeah, but no, Michael Leith. The needs of the many outweighs the needs of the few, right? First off, we don't know that Tuvok is going, when it comes to his family's not there, first off. And secondly, I believe Tuvok, in this instance, it comes to what Tuvok would want as well. And I think Tuvok would give his life. He's a Starfleet officer, would give his life for an innocent. And I think his family could see the logic in that. Neelix, nobody likes Neelix. Neelix adds nothing. The Hubble Space Telescope is an even match for an Oberth. I think the Hubble Telescope would take him out. Starfleet didn't give their lives to help save the Maquis from being slaughtered by the Cardassians and the Dominion. I agree, Kyle. Not only did Starfleet not give their lives to save the Maquis, but the Maquis were Federation citizens. They let Federation citizens die for their pacifism. And that, again, is, the next generation pacifism was still there, I think. Is there a supply class ship in Starfleet? There is. I forget what it's called. You actually see them, though. Tom and Tuvok were already dead for all intents and purposes. Tuvix was alive. I think you mean Neelix and Tuvok. Yeah, it was, even then, it was, there was a chance it wasn't going to work. And I wonder if they talked about it or not. I feel like they did. But she was risking everybody's life. It's final time asking. So a random Crusader. This comes up ever so often. Let me say this. Putting at Lore Reloaded is a good chance for me to see it because it pops up. I get 2 or 3 comments on slow times. I'll get 2 or 3 comments a minute. When you guys are really talking to me, I get 10 comments or 60 comments a minute. I can't keep up with it. The best way to ensure that I will do it is to do a super chat. I'm not telling you to do a super chat. I'm not saying that you have to. I'm not trying to say I won't do it if you don't. That's a guaranteed for me to answer it. I try to answer everyone that I see, but again, there's only one person talking about this. At Lore Reloaded, what are your thoughts on the Steamrunner and the New Orleans class? I do apologize for the spam, but I'd like to know. We've never really had them flushed out from a canon perspective. New Orleans, I don't know a lot about. Steamrunner, I like the design of it. I think it's interesting. I think it's unique. I think it's different. I loved it in Armada and Armada 2. But beyond that, I don't know too much about them. I know that, I forget the channel, Generation Tech maybe, or another one, came out and said they were Borg, anti-Borg. At least Steamrunner was anti-Borg. There's no evidence of that I see in canon. They're interesting. I would like to see more about them. My favorite is Akira, though. I think that if they did a hero class ship that was set post-Voyager, I wish they would use some of the already established. I'd like to see a Steamrunner, New Orleans, Saber class, maybe Akira. I don't want them to create a new ship, though. Hope that answers the question. At Lore Reloaded, how many planets/star systems are in the demilitarized zone on both sides? How don't know. A dozen? Maybe more. Nah, a dozen probably. Maybe less. Trek Yards and Space Dock did it. Okay. Well, Space Dock. I can see that. I think Space Dock is who I was responding to. I know Trek Yards did too. I disagree with them. I like Trek Yards. We'll be doing something coming up very shortly. I like Space Dock. Some of the new stuff. Some of the ways the channel looks is based on Space Dock. This channel exists. Some of the inspiration came from Trek Yards. I like both channels. I just disagree with their opinion on it. I think they're pulling it from canon that simply doesn't exist. I think they're pulling it from beta canon. And since I look at alpha canon generally, I don't think there's enough alpha canon that supports it. How useful is the Freedom class ship? Sounds familiar. I don't know. To hell with Tuvix, give me Nevok. Well, there you go. We have Nevok. All right, guys, we're going to be ending it very shortly. Let me look up the Freedom class starship. Star Trek. Oh. Well, that ship just sucks. Yeah, who thinks that's a good idea? One nacelle with a saucer? I don't know. I just looks silly. Darth Vader at Lord Reloaded. Who was it that said something to the extent the way to kill a man's reputation is to judge him based on the morals of another time? I can agree with that. Do you think the Federation would survive in our timeline with no World War III? I think World War III did kind of... there's a good tale to be told where World War III really set the standard for why the Federation is the way it is. That they saw how bad they could come, bring it to the brink of destruction. And so I think that's a good argument. I think that... I don't know. I could see why they became the way they did. All right, guys, so I think we're going to be ending it there. You know how this rolls generally, though, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing my little outro that I generally do. Then I'm going to stare at this because there's a time delay, so it makes me look creepy. So let's go ahead and get started. Guys, if you haven't, don't forget to like the channel, or like the video, as well as comment, rate, and subscribe. And guys, I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded. Creepy stare.